All right, today we're going to work on section 3.7 and 3.8, which is solving polynomial functions. So a polynomial function has exactly one variable without negative exponents. So here's an example of a polynomial right here. It has 4 terms. My leading coefficient is 2, my degree is 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4 terms makes this a polynomial. So last week we talked about how to solve quadratics. We solved them straight out if they didn't have a b term. We solved them by factoring if the discriminant was a perfect square. We also solved them with the quadratic formula. Remember, that always works. And then we also solved it with grouping. Now, P over Q's, which is the same thing as the rational root theorem, is when grouping doesn't work. So if we've got 4 terms and grouping doesn't work, then I have to go to the rational root theorem. So rational root gives me possible roots or zeros. Remember, roots and zeros mean exactly the same thing. So here's one way we can write just a polynomial expression. Leading coefficient, a sub 0, and then my last term right here is a sub n. So to find this with rational roots, we do what's called P over Q's. So P is a factor of a sub n, which is this last term right here. So I'm looking for all the factors of this last term. So basically, I'm just looking for what multiplies to give me this last number. Q is a factor of the first term, which is this a sub 0 sitting in front right here. So I'm just looking for what numbers multiply to give me a sub 0. We're going to find all those possible roots, and then we'll talk about how to solve it based off of those roots that we have. So there's 3 problems right below here, and these are the first 2 problems right here that we're going to work with. So looking at these first 2 problems, I'm just basically finding P, Q, and P over Q. So looking at number 1 right here. My P, remember, is this last term. My Q is this first term. So this is my P, this is my Q. So first thing I'm going to find is numbers that multiply to give me 25. So first thing, P. Numbers that multiply to give me 25. First obvious number is 1 times 25. Other things that multiply to give me 25 are 5 times 5. Now, one thing I have to work with is this negative sign. To multiply to get a negative, I can have a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. So whenever we write these P's and Q's, we're always going to put plus or minus in front of them. So let's go in order. So first thing is 1. Next one is 5. And the next one is 25. So 1 times 25 can give me 25, or 5 times 5 can give me 25. Those are the numbers that multiply to give me P. All right, next thing I'm going to look for is this Q up here. Q is this first term. So I'm going to look for all numbers that multiply to give me 2. Well, there's only one obvious reason, 1 times 2. But it can be a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative to give me a positive 2. So I'm going to list plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 2. So whenever you're listing out P's and Q's, always put this plus or minus sign in front of every single number. All right, last thing I'm going to do here is take these and I'm going to divide. So I'm going to do my P over Q. So I'm going to take all my P's and divide by all my Q's to get my P over Q's. So first thing, I'm going to take all 3 of my P's and divide by 1. Well, anytime you divide anything by 1, it's just basically whatever's left on top, which are just these 3 numbers. So we got plus or minus 1, plus or minus 5, and plus or minus 25. Now I take all of my P's, since I'm done with this 1, I take all of my P's and I divide by 2. So I've got 1 half, 5 halves, and 25 halves. So I'm going to write those 3 down. Remember, plus or minus always. So plus or minus 1 half, 1 divided by 2, plus or minus 5 halves, 5 divided by 2, and then plus or minus 25 halves, 25 divided by 2. So here I have 6 numbers, but really I have plus or minus signs, so I have possibility of 12 possible solutions that may work to solve this equation. All right, so there's number 1. All right, now let's go to number 2. Now number 2 has 4 terms. Still the same thing, finding P, Q, and P over Q. Now remember, to find P, I'm looking at this last number back here, 6. So I'm going to multiply, I'm going to find numbers to multiply to give me 6. Well, 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. So listing those things in order, remember, always plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 6. Now, since this is negative, I can have a positive 1 and a negative 6, or a negative 1 and a positive 6, or a positive 2 and a negative 3. You get the idea. That's why these plus or minus signs are very important to solve these problems. All right, next thing I'm going with is Q. Q is this first number right here, so I'm looking at this 2 right here. So numbers that multiply to give me 2, only one set of possibilities. 1 times 2, and make sure we always put that plus or minus sign in front of everything. All right, next thing I'm going to do now is find my P over Q's. So looking at my P over Q's, I'm going to take all of my P's and divide by 1. Well, 1 divided by 1 is 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 6 divided by 1 is 6. I get all my p's back out. That's going to happen every single time. So plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 6. Now, next thing I'm going to do, since I'm done with that 1, I'm going to take all of these p's and divide by my next q, which is 2. So I got 1/2. Well, I don't have that, so I'm going to write it down. Plus or minus 1/2. Next thing I got is 2 over 2. Well, 2 over 2 is 1. I already got 1 written down, so I'm not going to write it again. Next one I got is 3 over 2. Don't have that one, so I need to list that one. 3 over 2. And then I've got 6 over 2. 6 over 2 is 3. I already have it right here, so I don't have to write that down again. So from here, I got 4 here and 2 here, so I got a total of 6. But I really have a total of 12 because I got plus or minus signs everywhere. All right, so this is how you just find P, Q, and P over Q. So right now, you need to work on the next problem in your notes, which is number 3. Now, number 3, you've got 4 terms in this particular problem, but you're going to do it exactly the same way. So it looks like this: x to the 5th minus x to the 4th minus 4x cubed plus 8x squared minus 32x minus 48. So remember, to solve this problem for P, you're going to look at 48 and list all the factors out that give you 48. Then you're going to do this up here. Now, remember, in front of here, I still got to have a number. Imaginary 1 is sitting right there. So for my Q, I'm only looking for what multiplies to give me 1. That should be pretty simple. So then I'm going to take all my P's and divide by my Q, and then I'm going to find all of my P over Q's. Now you try that.